In the last episode, we built the 1983 Sunset City World Exposition, an absolutely massive event attracting millions of people from around the world and within the Seminole State. With the theme of space exploration, the Expo showcased local businesses, future city development projects, and landmarks, as well as exhibits from within the City Skylines community. It built some much needed infrastructure, it's increased tourism, and most importantly, boost the economy. The Expo, it's just been an all-round good time, a fair income success, no complaints. It's just like a little tiny problem. We did go over budget, and it did open to the public unfinished, which does mean some exhibit halls are completely empty. And yeah, we didn't build all the public transport we promised. The infrastructure's a bit iffy, but at least it's making money. Yeah, that's right. So it turns out, rather than taking inspiration from all those world fairs that I spoke about in the last episode, the ones in the 80s that were fairly successful, this one's turned out more like the 1964 World Fair, which was absolutely terrible. So I guess in the same vein, we're gonna have to try and save our World Expo. We're gonna have to try and turn a profit, we're gonna have to try and attract more people. How are we gonna do that? Well, we're gonna add some more exhibits. We're gonna improve the infrastructure. We're gonna improve the public transport. But most importantly, we're going to add a super flash, a super massive, way over the top hotel. Apparently, with the new hotels and resorts DLC, you can make a bit of money with these things. So will this mega hotel be the saving grace for our Expo? Or would this just add to our financial burden? Well, you're just gonna have to watch the video, I guess. Oh yeah, Hotels and Resorts DLC. You guys know how much I've been hanging out for a DLC that tackles tourism and hotels just a little bit better than the in-game mechanics. Now we finally have something that allows us to build hotels and resorts for, I guess, a good purpose. You can actually see people stay at these places and hopefully turn a bit of a profit. We're going to be diving into this DLC, having a look at all the things that we can do with it. And we're not even going to be starting at our World Expo. No, we're going to start on this little island down here. This little island is known as Gloria, and it's all part of the Seminole Keys, which is a network of islands that stretch all the way down south of the Seminole State. We have a couple of hotels and resorts around this area, including one that is already on La Gloria, but of course it's not operational, it's just a unique building, I guess, like the rest of the resorts and motels on nearby island Santa Julia. And I got some ideas on how to make these a bit more functional, but for now, I just want to focus on building some new ones that are going to sit on our little island. But most of all, just exploring the new DLC. This is my first look at it, and I want to see if it fulfills my wildest dreams. The first thing I wanted to check out is I wanted to see just how attractive this island was and nearby islands to the different types of resorts and hotels that we can choose from. Of course, it looks like we're mostly looking at nature and sightseeing, which is totally fine. I don't think there's really much in terms of shopping around here, but we are going to be building some stuff in terms of business. That's interesting. Just you wait. Because I'm not playing with any milestones, I've already got all the hotels and resorts unlocked. I still wanted to start at the very beginning though, and I'm starting with our little rental cabins, and decided that this trailer park would be a perfect place to have a little look and see just what these things can do. The info panel was really ticking all the boxes for the different types of attractiveness in this area, so I decided to place down a few more because we had the space for them, and I feel like they fit perfectly within this trailer park. This is a CM trailer park, by the way. CM owns this entire island. It's called La Gloria, so I guess it's La Gloria, but is still owned by one person. A little bit shady, but this is a bit of a shady island. More on that later. I'm using Move It here just to drag some of the cabins a bit closer together so we have a bit more space to place them around. They have a bit of too much space, I guess, if we were just to place them down. I guess they're not really meant for a caravan park, but they fit really nicely in a caravan park. And I love that they are attracting tourists to stay here because we have a couple of residents that live in this area. So just placing down a couple of extra bits and pieces to attract more people. And because we are attracting so many people, just cranking up the cost a little bit more. But I did want my Surf Reach Hotel to actually attract tourists to stay here, so I decided to place in one of the hotels within the walls within the building just to see if I can kind of hide it within the structure so you can't really see it. But that one didn't really work, so decided to choose one that was a little bit thinner and just hide it inside. And I think like down the track, people are probably going to make some things for the Steam Workshop that will fit a little bit better than this. But for now, this works alright. This is still functional. But it was at this point that I realized this hotel's DLC is a little bit more complicated than I expected. If I was going to make this hotel really to its full potential, I was going to have to build some extra things around this area to really attract the people that I wanted. So I figured this was probably a good time to start fleshing out the commercial district. What was this place going to look like? Well, I figured that it wasn't going to be a shopping haven. You know, people aren't coming here just for the shopping, they're coming here because of the beach, they're coming here for the sights, they're not really coming here just to go shopping. But I really like the fact that there is a need for shopping, you know, and a hotel this size, people still need to buy stuff. You know, some people are going to go and walk down and grab some takeaway, or they're going to go to a cafe or whatever, or buy some souvenirs, because that's what is generally around these sort of places. We are taking inspiration from the Florida Keys, so there are lots of different islands to choose from, but it's mostly fast food, restaurants, cafes, souvenir shops, motels, that sort of stuff. And I reckon a lot of people probably eat at their resorts. So I'm not really going too much in terms of like rows of shops and things like that. It's mostly that sort of, things to sort of find on the side of a highway. And there are exceptions to that, but for this particular island, that's the vibe we're going for. And it was looking pretty decent. And it was nice to see that people were now a bit more attracted to this hotel. Perfect. I decided to do the same technique and splice in a couple of these hotels within Santa Julia, but they just weren't really fitting. You know, the buildings that I had were much smaller than the types of hotels that were provided with the DLC, so maybe someone's going to make some little cubes that I can place in to some of those pre-existing buildings, or maybe Rico will make it so that you can make these into hotels. I don't really know, but for now we've just got this one here, and it's fine. It's functioning pretty well, but it doesn't really fit the vibe. But that's fine, it's there for now, and we'll probably play some more later on down the track. From a hotel that doesn't fit very well to one that is an absolute perfect fit. This boat hotel is just perfect for an area like this. Noticing that it's requiring quite a lot of shopping, which was a bit of a problem because we already had some shopping within the area, and I didn't exactly want to build lots more, but we were going to have to build something because this is not going to work. And then I realized that if you place a bit of public transport around the area, that might fix the problem. Okay, well that's fun. Why don't we do that? So I decided to place down a little bit of a bus network that connected both islands up together. I didn't really want it to go any further than this, but I did want it to connect up the hotels and resorts to the commercial districts and also the ferry network, because there is a ferry terminal over at Santa Julia, so that was a bit of a plus and worked pretty nicely. And then for the buses themselves, well, these weren't working very nicely, but I did have an asset that was going to work much better. How about these little mini buses? I think these are absolutely perfect for these two islands, just to connect them up with a little bit of local public transport. How beautiful are these things? And with that, it was time just to round off this area with a little bit of parking for the hotel, as well as a little bit more commercial and just a bit of detail work, just to make this place look a little bit nicer. And I was feeling pretty happy with the general progress of this island. Things were starting to look pretty decent. I was really happy with it. With shopping increased a bit in the area, we needed to tackle the business side of things. But what sort of business would you do in an area like this? Well, just down the road from the hotel and resort, you have Gator Bar. You can tell it's Gator Bar because there is, in fact, an alligator attached to the front of the building. Now, don't be fooled by the quaint and cozy nature of the building. This place is not for the general public. No, love, don't go in, no. Yeah, Gator Bar's not a nice place. You don't want to be going into a place like this. Yeah, they have some live music. They've got a decent outdoor area. It might be a little bit cracked up and the furniture doesn't really match, but Gator Bar is not a great place. Yeah, it might serve some drinks, got some food, but it's mostly a place of business. What sort of business, you ask? I don't know. I've never been here before. I wouldn't go to a place like this. I'm a family guy. I don't go to places like this. Who goes to places like this? Bikie gangs. Yeah, this place is owned by the Sunset City Bikie Gang. That's not their name. You tell me what their name is, because that's definitely not their name. They've got a name though. We did speak about gangs a while back, and you guys suggested a whole bunch of different types. This is one of the ones that people were suggesting, and there are a whole bunch more that are being made and be placed within Sunset City over the next little while. Sven Berlin has been putting these together. These little guys look amazing. They look so great. They look a bit dodgy. I mean, that's a given, but they just look great just hanging out in this outdoor space in Gator Bar, just arguing, just getting up to a whole bunch of dodgy stuff. I really like this guy, he's leaning against the wall. I decided to drag him out the front just because I feel like that's a nice little welcome to Gator Bar, you know, just a nice little friendly welcome. But like I said before, I do really like it when you can create these really intricate and story-driven scenes, but then also make it so that it's within the game functionality. So I am placing these little block services within the building of Gator Bar. These act as office blocks, so that by placing these, gives people reason to stay within the resorts and hotels on this island. And who's staying at these resorts to do business? Well, it's dodgy business folk from Sunset City. They're coming down here and doing business at Gator Bar. What are they doing down here? Well, I don't know. They're doing something. And why La Gloria? Why this place? Well, I'll leave that up to you guys. But for now, we're gonna leave it because we got more important things to do. We got a World Expo to fix. The first thing on my to-do list is to fix this public transport situation. It's not that good. Yeah, the monorail's doing an alright job, but the bus network could be much better. At the moment, it's dropping people off on kind of a bit of an awkward spot. It's right on this main road and doesn't even drop you directly at the World Expo. You have to cross a couple of roads. That's not really that good, especially with so many people coming here. So I figured the best option was to make a dedicated place for buses to drop people off and pick people up at, and a place where it's not going to interrupt the road network too much. We actually had the perfect spot right out the front of the Expo. It just needed a little bit of work. Now this was going to be way easier in my mind than it really turned out, because making this network actually kind of come off this cross section, oh man, absolute pain. I'm gonna speed run this a little bit, but this really took quite a long time to make this work, and even when it did work, it was kind of a little bit wonky, but it did mean that buses were able to access this area without any other vehicles coming in here, which was very nice. It also meant that buses could drop people off without it interrupting the flow of traffic, also very nice. In terms of the types of buses coming here, I wanted to choose high capacity vehicles and then also vehicles going to the main transport hubs of Sunset City. So we're not going everywhere, but mostly getting people from those big hubs to stop at the Expo, because that's the majority of the people actually using this area. I also wanted to make it so that taxis were going to stop here too, and I decided to place the taxi stops on this side, which was a bit of a silly idea, so I decided to just drag them over to the other side of the road, which worked out much nicer. You will actually see taxis stopping there, which is very nice. But as you can see, quite a lot of people using this bus stop, so I decided to make it so that people had a bit more access, a little bit more space to actually access this transport hub. So I dragged out a pedestrian pathway so that it connected up to our bus network a little bit better, and voila, just a little bit of landscaping, bit of pavement, and it was looking pretty nice. And then for that monorail network, pretty easy fix, just a bit of extra capacity, adding a couple of extra vehicles, easy stuff. But what about when you arrive at the Expo? When you go inside the place? Yeah, it was a little bit underwhelming. We didn't really deliver on everything we promised. So it was time just to add a little bit more infrastructure. We wanted to make this waterfront a little bit nicer than it actually was, because at the moment it was still a bit marshy, underdeveloped. I actually want this to be a real feature of the Expo, but I'm not quite ready to build it completely yet. We're just going to build a couple of things for now. I would love to know from you guys, what sort of things do you think I should build for the waterfront of this Expo? There's so many great options in terms of the waterfronts for the World Expos during the 80s, but not even just the 80s, there's a lot of World Expos that had these very spectacular waterfronts, so then we can do something kind of nice here, so let me know. But there is something that I definitely wanted to include, something that, oh man, as soon as someone said this, I was like, yes, we are doing this. mcbarge. We're building mcbarge. So many people suggested this, I absolutely love this idea. So basically, mcbarge was a floating McDonald's that was on a boat, I guess on a barge, that was part of the World Expo in Vancouver, and it was really popular for the World Expo, but since then it's just kind of been abandoned. People don't really know what to do with it, and it's still floating around Vancouver. I actually found it on Google Earth, which is super cool. You know, I love abandoned stuff. This is so cool, what a great idea. But of course, we're not going to be doing mcbarge. This is going to be King Barge? Bun Barge? King Bun's barge. This is going to be King Bun's barge, of course, owned by the King Bun's burger chain. This is pretty expensive shot in the dark by King Bun's. I mean, this is an expensive build, but it's only really going to last for the World Expo. I mean, what can you do with a floating restaurant like this? Can you float it to Sunset City later on? I don't know. What do you guys think? But I think that this is a bit of a gamble for them. We'll see how this works. We'll see if it even attracts people to the World Expo. At this stage, I'm not quite sure. In terms of the build itself, this was a little more challenging than I expected. I was just like, okay, I'll just put a building on top of a barge, piece of cake. But the more I looked at reference pictures of mcbarge, I was like, oh, you know what? I've really got to capture how this thing really looked. And it was kind of a little bit Art Deco, a little bit futuristic. It had a real style to it, you know, lots of curvy walls and, you know, flat rooftop, and it just was very interesting looking. And I wanted to build something kind of like that. So I'm using procedural objects quite a lot here just to make some of the shapes look a little bit better, and just so that we can manipulate a little bit of the shapes so they're larger and fit into place. A lot of procedural objects here just to make it work. And it kind of did work. It was a bit of a splice of different types of architecture, but it is what it is. You know, really trying to make sure there was lots of windows so that people can really enjoy the view. And looking at it now, I think I probably need to add some seating on top. I think that'd be really nice. But of course, got to add some King Bun's logos around, and just a couple little bits and pieces, like a walkway going down to the barge itself, and also placing a pathway there so that we can actually get people walking here. But I didn't see anyone walking down here, which was a little bit disappointing, but also kind of, I don't know, maybe I expected that to happen. I'd love to see people using this though. I'm using some block services just to attract some people. These are parks, and no one really turned up. Of course, Mike Burgundy looking a little sad out the front of the entrance, as well as a couple of dancers for the grand opening. But yeah, no one really turned up. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Hopefully things look up for you, buddy. I really hope so. Towards the back of the World Expo was a big old construction site. Just a little reminder that the Expo did not open to its full potential. There was a big site still left to be developed. Yeah, it's time to develop this place up. And I knew exactly the building that I wanted to build here. Something grand, something futuristic, something just extravagant and large. A real focal point, a bit of eye candy for the skyline. Something that'll outlive the Expo. Something for the city. But something extravagant for sure. So, whoa, okay. That's much larger than I expected. Okay, so this design hotel, it's pretty big. It's exactly what I want for the World Expo. In terms of style and architecture and futuristic, it's great. But look at the size of this thing compared to the rest of the Expo. So my initial reaction when I first saw this was, oh man, I can't use this. This is probably too big. And then I was like, you know what? This is exactly the sort of thing they'd build. The organizers of the World Exposition have completely fudged up the grand opening. They've overpromised, under-delivered, the infrastructure's not there, it's not even complete. They've spent way too much money and not even making any income from it at this stage. They're losing money. So do they fix this by filling some of the empty exhibit spaces? No, they build a ridiculous grand hotel. And you know what? We have to take out a loan to build it because we built it in the wrong place to begin with. So with a little bit of extra money now in my pocket thanks to a hefty loan, I can start getting to a little bit of the groundwork for this place. Wanted to place some sort of water feature. I know that we've got a lake around us, we've got that big bay that we haven't even finished yet. Well, I kind of wanted to build some sort of pond area so that people can kind of hang out. A lake, I guess, not a pond, it's more of a lake. A tiny lake. Dealing with water in City Skylines is a little bit tricky. Dealing with tiny water is very tricky. So making this thing work was always going to be a bit of a challenge. Decided to do a bit of a key around parts of it, but then also using this asset by King Leno, which I have turned into a procedural object so that I can just change the shape a little bit, but then mostly just to sink it into the ground because before it was a park, which meant that it didn't really sink to the ground very nicely, but this worked a lot better. I was also able to scale it down a bit and just change it so it looked a little bit better in some spots. And yeah, it's a bit of a wonky pond here, lake thing, but I think it's nice. I think it's got kind of an interesting shape to it. I also placed a little fountain in the middle, which I'm going to change ever so slightly in a little bit. It's going to be great. adding in just a couple of little bits of detail, some pieces with the new free update, which are super cool that you can just change the variations of after just go with the one that is very generic because, well, we are in the 80s. That is a bit more of the theme for this area. And then looking at our grand hotel, which is just... it's doing really badly. I probably should have looked at the types of things that are around the area when I placed it down because this is actually really far away from the downtown, which means that it's not really benefiting from any of the things that are close by. So that's a problem for now, but I can easily fix that because the Expo is actually going to be pretty overpowered in terms of the things that are inside some of these buildings. So I decided to place in some of the tiny buildings, some of these tiny growables inside some of these exhibition spaces, which, of course, if you were visiting the World Expo, then all these places would have shopping and businesses and, you know, things to visit and stuff. So I am placing a whole bunch of things inside them, but I would like to figure out in terms of the lore what sort of things are going inside some of these buildings. Some great suggestions from last week. Please keep them coming because we will be getting to that at some stage. But I also figured I needed to place some sort of internal police station inside just to fix a bit of the crime, and then the building did catch on fire, so yeah, we'll have to place a fire station at some stage too. But I was just a bit worried about money, so I decided just to let that just sit there for a bit. You know, I'm sure that fire will go out at some stage, and instead we'd press on with a build. The centerpiece of our lake is, of course, this rocket ship that is all part of our theme of space exploration. This fits in beautifully, just reshuffling a bit of the fountains so that they go all around it. Super nice. But something that was bothering me about this place, something that was maybe a little bit unnecessary, it wasn't putting out this fire, it was making it so that the monorail connected up to the hotel. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit excessive. Yeah, I know that there is a monorail station right next door and it's like a 30-second walk. But I wanted people staying here to directly access our monorail network, you know, directly into the monorail station straight from their hotel. The way these design hotels work is they also host events, and I wanted to really take that and make it part of the exposition. So people would not only just stay at the hotel, but would also go to events underneath the building. You know, this whole space would be dedicated to events and exhibits and showrooms, restaurants, cafes. So I'm really just adding to this whole area, and I'm also splicing in a whole bunch of those types of things so that people are actually going to this space. You're not just going to see people using the hotel as a place to stay, but also a place of entertainment, which is why I kind of wanted the monorail to go directly there. Plus, I just think this looks awesome. While I wait for the first monorail to arrive, I just dress up the place with just a little bit of trees and some palms. Of course, will be added at some stage. And then, as you can see, quite a lot of people are using this stop. It is just so satisfying to see the monorail station working. And plus, people walk inside the hotel and access the monorail. You know I love that stuff. And again, lots of people using it, so I'm most probably going to have to add some extra monorail vehicles to our network. But how well is our hotel performing? Well, pretty well. It's making a decent amount of money, and it's not even totally maxed out in terms of the attractiveness, so we'll just have to play around with those settings. But then I decided just to customize it ever so slightly, giving it a name. I mean, it's a pretty lame name, Sunset Palm Hotels. Yeah, we can do better than that. Let me know if you got a better name. And maybe someone should own this chain. Like, have they saved the Expo? Oh, I mean, not really. We're still losing quite a lot of money. But a lot of people are now rocking up just to go to the hotel, which is super cool. And the Expo with all the extra infrastructure is definitely better off. I mean, a lot of people using public transport, which is just so lovely to see. But financially, look, it's improved, but it's not saved. We're gonna need more than a hotel chain to save our financial situation in Sunset City. We're gonna need more than that. Well, maybe something is coming next week. Something that might change our financial situation. A big business is moving into Sunset City, and with it, new infrastructure, new resources, jobs, and maybe more money. But we'll just have to wait and see with that one. My friends, thank you so much for watching today's episode of Sunset City. I always think episodes are going to be small and then they just snowball into something massive. Well, this was another massive one, but fun one nonetheless. Next week is going to be another fun one. Again, snowballed. And the week after, Oceania. Yeah, you guys have been asking for it. yeah, I need to get back to it. Let's do it. A big shout out to the lovely supporters over on Patreon supporting the channel. Shafts, Matt Francis, A Canadian Moose, Mart Haitian, Lawrence Pitts, Cameron Inglis, Dan Dobson, Harry Smith, Murph90210, Jibba, Nick Kashab, Not Validated, Axaris, Donglan Lee, Jim Royster, and Marcus Allen. Thank you, legends. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one. See you later.